God bless you, beloved, and thank you so much for tuning in to Sow In Growth. I am the sower, Bishop R. Daniel Sutton II, and today it is a wonderful day for you to grow. We are still journeying through the book A Simple Life, authored by Tom Rainer, and today's lesson is subject around moving to healthier relationships. Brothers and sisters, relationships become healthier when at least one of the parties have a selfless attitude. Of course, it's a great relationship when all parties are selfless. But you probably been or are in a relationship where one person is obviously selfish. In fact, he or she may be a jerk at times. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Don't lose hope. Today you're going to learn how to move to a healthier relationship. Do you remember our discussion of congestion? Congestion consists of those things that keep us from living the simple life, those activities that keep us too busy to live. Congestion that hinders the relationship from developing to its full potential. Congestion is bad because it blocks the movement we must have to live the simple life. It's bad because it means we are busy in other areas of our lives when we could be spending more time growing healthy relationships. In the previous Clarity chapter, we looked at a simple mission statement. If you recall, a wife wrote a simple mission statement about her relationship with her husband. I'll become a better wife to my husband by complimenting him at least once a day for the next 10 days, and by refraining from criticizing him during that same period. The statement has clarity. It is certainly doable. But what could hinder its progress? What could stand in its way? Recognition. We need to recognize the need for healthy relationships. I know. That sounds silly to you, because who doesn't recognize the need for healthy relationships? My point is that a true recognition of the need means that we will move in that direction. And the direction that seems to be the best for the relationship involves the little things. Giving a flower in the morning, being committed to saying something nice to someone. Little things. Parents desiring to do better controlling their tempers with their children. The little things. Arriving to work, not just on time, but before time. The little things. Not spending so much time on social media and on Facebook, but being in His book in the presence of God. Just the little things. What it means is correcting that which needs improvement, not from the other party, but through your own environment. We know what we need to do. The problem is we're not doing it. Listen to me tonight. Clarity is the intention. Movement is the action. Healthy relationships depend on less congestion and more movement. And that usually happens best when we focus on the little things. When Tom and Eric wrote the book, The Simple Church, they were amazed of the responses from leaders around this world who had read the book. One leader from Bakersfield, California, emailed Tom and told him, listen, I picked up The Simple Church first because the title appealed to me. But what I read blew me away. The book talked about activities replacing the true discipleship making in churches, revealing that many churches were so busy adding things to do that they neglected seeing if the lives was really being changed. Well, that made me think. We are just a collection of activities. He said things will change though. He said, I'm going to be committed to leading our people to become a church that really understands what we're supposed to be doing and why we're supposed to be doing it. What is true in many churches, brothers and sisters, is true in many of our lives. Activities are replacing purpose. We are so busy doing activities that we are neglecting what really matters. And most of you don't really need to address this reality. One, because you already know it, you're living it, and you caused it. Activities replace the important matters that help relationship grow. You have to watch your activities. What activities are hindering you from developing a deeper relationship with your wife, with your husband, with your children, and even with God? You do have the best intentions, but the congestion of so many things to do doesn't let it happen. You're too bogged down. You don't have time for nobody. You're trying to put a world of work, of activities in a short span of time. I'm trying to tell you today, it's time to get closer to your spouse. It's time for you to get closer to your kids. It's time to get closer to your family. And you know it's really time for you to get closer to God. It's time to recover the simple life so you can have a real relationship. One of the most common types of congestion in the development of a relationship is selfishness. Simply stated, you look at the relationship through the lens of what other people can or should do for you. But movement toward a meaningful relationship will only succeed if you decide that you will seek the best for somebody else. Anything else is just an exercise of self-interest. When the Apostle Paul wrote the Corinthian church in the first letter to the congregation, he was dealing with a church that was pretty self-centered. He confronted a whole list of problems in the church. He even had to deal with the arguments about the leadership over the spiritual gifts. The so-called love chapter of 1 Corinthians 13 is often read at weddings as a testimony of the bride and groom's love for each other. While there is certainly nothing wrong with this reading, the love chapter at weddings, it is fascinating to understand it in its original context. The members of the church at Corinth were arguing about which of the spiritual gifts were superior in 1 Corinthians 12, and in 1 Corinthians 14, the issue was about being appropriate of the spiritual gift of tongues. Sandwiched between these two contentions is the love chapter. Paul was warning the Corinthians to cease their selfish ramblings and start practicing selfless love towards one another. Listen, let's just take a look at some of the descriptions Paul gives true and unconditional love. He says, and remember, watch this, he is doing this to let the church members know how they are to relate to one another. It's simply a biblical lesson on the right relationship. He says love is patient. Maybe some of us need to look at the inverse of this description. Love is not impatient. Love is patient. You have lost patience with our spouse, with our children, with coworkers, with friends and family. And what we don't understand is we are looking, watch this, after our own desires and needs before somebody else's. Patient love is always practicing and placing someone else's needs before our own. He said love is kind. Kindness implies learning how to be intentional. I intentionally want to be nice to you. I intentionally want to say something positive about you. Kindness typically requires forethought. And the forethought is an effort itself to demonstrate love. When you're kind, you cannot be an afterthought. You intentionally wanted to do something good. The very fact of thinking about what we can do for someone else is a selfless act. In the early stages of any romantic relationship, kindness is more natural. But true love will demonstrate acts of kindness in all kinds of relationships, at all stages of relationships. Love does not envy. Love does not envy. He says love is not boastful. Love does not seek to dominate the conversation with self. Love is eager to hear from others. Love is not conceited. Watch this. This comment from the Apostle Paul is parallel to his comment about boasting. When one boasts, he talks about himself. When one is conceited, she focuses on herself. But love is focused on others. Love is concerned about others. Love does not act inappropriately. Some translations say love is not rude. At the heart of rudeness or acting improperly is a disregard for others. The lack of love is also a lack of respect for another person. Love is not selfish. Rarely did we hear a spouse talk about what he or she should do more for their spouse. Movement toward the simple life is not taking place in many relationships because so many are looking only out for their own needs. Love is not provoked. Sometimes anger is appropriate. Paul himself became angered when he encountered the idols in Athens. Acts chapter 17. Jesus was angry when he saw the hardness of the people's heart in Mark 3, and the money changers in the temple in John 2. But this text speaks to those who are easily angered. It is for the hot-headed among us whose temper becomes agitated over the small things. That type of quick anger is again focused on self and an unwillingness to be patient. Love does not keep a record of wrongs. The story of the prophet Hosea and his wife Gomer is one of the toughest applications in the Bible. The story is about God's mandate to Hosea to take Gomer, his wife, even though she was a promiscuous woman. The story continues as God tells him again and again to take her back. It helps us to understand this book of the Bible when we learn that Hosea received a burden from God to show God's forgiving love to the unfaithfulness of the Israelites. Then the Lord said to me, "Go again, show love to a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress, just as the Lord loves the Israelites through their turning to other gods and their love for raisin cakes." This passage describes God's persistence and forgiving love towards the wayward nation. It foreshadows the same type of forgiving love Christ demonstrated by his death on the cross. But our challenge, brothers and sisters, comes when we begin to understand what persistence and forgiving love should be part of our lives as well. We often feel more justified when we hold grudges and refuse to forgive. After all, that person wronged us. Why should we even think about forgiving him or her? But the Apostle Paul said that love keeps no record of wrongs. But sometimes relationships are hindered because we have an unforgiving spirit. Even though we was wrong, that's a tough remedy. But guess what? It's mandatory. It's biblical. If one of the greatest hindrances to movement in a relationship is selfishness, then 1 Corinthians 13 is a great place to start. And if we even come close to demonstrating love as described in that passage, we will have come a long way. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? We're talking and we're looking at ways for you to move to a simple life in a relationship. I'm trying to help you and I'm trying to look out for you. I'm trying to have your interests at heart. And then I tell you, you need to give up your own interests and look out for somebody else. I can almost hear somebody telling me, "Come on, Bishop, get back to my needs." Well, I am. One of the greatest needs we have in the relationship is to focus on others. It is ironic, but that's the way it is, and that's the way it works. The Apostle Paul said time and time again, I believe in Philippians, he said, "Do nothing out of rivalry or conceit, but in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. Everyone should look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." How? I'm glad you asked. You got to learn how to take small steps. We realize that in 10 days, you won't transform where you are to where you should be in a relationship. We understand giving a flower every day will not change the fragrance of your environment, but you will make progress. That's how you have to move toward the simple life. That's how you will begin the steps towards healthier relationships. Sometimes our relationships are like the dark maze. We start with the best of intentions. We are confident that we will get through the challenge with victory, but we meet one dead end after another. The simple life is a life towards healthier relationships. We have a mission to have great relationships. That's clarity. And then we begin making progress towards those healthy relationships. That's movement. But movement is hindered by congestion. And the two most common types of congestion are activities and selfishness. We begin this section by looking at your plan or your mission statement for healthier relationships. Then we begin to examine how best to act or move on that plan. I pray that you have addressed those two hindrances. I pray that you have made a commitment to begin, even if it's just a small step, to move beyond the obstacles. It's time to get out of the dark maze. It's time to move toward a healthier relationship in a simple life. This is the sower, Bishop R. Daniel Sutton II. And remember, you don't have to go through life. You can grow through life.